Welcome back to another episode of Tech Startup Network. Joining me today is Jason Kraus, the founder and CEO of Prepare for VC, where he works with early stage founders to help them become investor ready, sharpen their narrative, and build companies that actually last. Prepare for VC supports startups from pre seed through Series A, with founders collectively raising over $480 million in capital. Jason is also an active investor in more than 20 ventures and the author of Venture Forward: Lessons from Leaders. He's deeply invested in the startup ecosystem as a community builder and advisor, helping founders strengthen decision making, leadership habits, and clarity around fundraising and growth. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ashley. It's great to be here and excited to speak with you today.
Likewise, I would love to have you start off by sharing with our listeners more about who you are and what you're doing at Prepare for VC.
Appreciate it. You gave a great intro and really appreciate that. My background comes from the venture space, and as an entrepreneur myself, I've worked at early stage venture funds, even starting out as an associate or analyst, reviewing hundreds of pitch decks, all the way through being a partner at our EQX fund and managing the pipeline and investor relationships for equity venture partners. And basically, all of that experience showed there's a lot of great founders out there, who I had the really privilege and opportunity to meet, but also a lot of founders that are just part of the pipeline at a lot of investment groups and never even get the opportunity to get in the door and have a meeting in the first place. So, that led to starting Prepare for VC, kind of knowing what investors, what their lives look like, needing to filter from 1,000 to 5,000 companies to find the 5 to 10 investments you make in a given year. And, you know, believing in the philosophy that first and foremost, you're investing in the founders and um, the entrepreneurs behind this business. And kind of, with that scale, like you don't always have the opportunity to make those connections, find out enough about the founders. And so that's where, really Prepare for VC started with understanding the investment mindset and helping founders kind of navigate that process. And then as our team grew and expanded, and we brought other serial entrepreneurs, investors, part experts in their spaces on board. It kind of grew into like, how do we help founders become the real leaders that investors want to back? And how do we help the investors in our network, recognize like whenever Prepare for VC recommends somebody, it's a strong opportunity and we should meet that person.
Totally. And I think what you're doing is so important because as you mentioned, it's like there are these great founders out here, but really it's just they're getting their foot in the door and getting these VCs to actually notice them amidst all of the pitch decks that they're receiving. And so with that being said, I'd love to hear the type of support that Prepare for VC typically walks founders through. Like what are the main areas or key focus points that you support them with?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a couple ways of working with entrepreneurs. We do like one-on-one coaching, consulting, basically advisory on working with the founders, the CEOs, their team directly, especially around the fundraise. And then we also have cohort programs. So our flagship is called the Breakthrough Program. We work with about 6 to 10 entrepreneurs. In more of a group setting on everything from go to market, growth, fundraising. We bring in a lot of different mentors and experts and get them ready for a final graduation event at the end of the program, and also to build connections in there. And then we have a newer tool we launched the end of last year that takes a lot of our insights we've built up over the years, and it's called Compass, and it helps founders really use kind of our own human plus AI insights and figure out what their roadmap should be based on the hundreds of things they're trying to do on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I'd say the center, like really kind of what ties it all together is we're helping basically, I mean, any founder, there's a lot of a lot of different noise and direction coming at you on like what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, how you're telling your story yourself or like how you can redo the pitch. And we're helping a founder figure out like really what their ultimate vision is in the first place and how they can communicate their expertise and why they're the right people and the right team for this venture and get other people excited as they are about what they're doing.
Totally. And one of the things you just mentioned, which is huge, is helping founders craft their pitch correctly. And I know that that's something that you do at Prepare for VC is host, I think, weekly pitch practice events. And so I would love to pick your brain for any founders who are listening here to understand, in your opinion, what goes into a perfect pitch? Like, what are the main components that a founder should be covering and including to really entice a potential investor?
Yeah, I think a lot of it. So there's a general format, but a lot of it also depends on really like what tells the story most effectively. So, like we usually like to see the problems, the solution, the, market makeup, more about the team and, what the growth trajectory there's a reason you're fundraising in the first place and what does that do to get you to growth towards the next round, and then ultimately the scalability down the road to a future exit event. But beyond that, like there's something that makes every startup unique, and so um, that can trigger like, do I put more emphasis on let's say you have an amazing team, like you're well known and recognized as like the leaders in this field. And, if anybody else had the idea, you'd be the only ones that could actually execute on it. Then you should spend a lot more time and put the team earlier on in the presentation. If it's, you have a lot of intellectual property protection and, you've already secured things that are really hard to patent and, you've done a lot of work really, on the technology itself, or maybe even you have a huge client that everybody's going to recognize that logo. Like whatever the most exciting thing right now is making that the highlight of it. And then also making it really easy to understand, without going into all of the technical details, what you're actually doing and why it's important. Because a lot of times that's where we see the presentations go like way too in depth as how are we like what are the nuts and bolts of what we're doing rather than what customers actually care that we're delivering them.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like always think about the end user, not necessarily the product you're building, but the impact that you're making and who it's benefiting.
Right. Yeah, because I mean now or there's always waves. I think AI is here to stay, but there's like whatever the technology is, blockchain AI, just regular SaaS technology. I think from a user standpoint, um, the customers don't always care. They care that you're able to deliver something that solves their problem in an effective manner and uses things that are, secure and safe. And if that happens to use, you know, a deeper tech stack, great. If it solves their problems, it doesn't always really matter to the end customer how you're actually doing it.
Hmm. Absolutely. And on the topic of reaching out to potential investors, what are your thoughts on cold emailing versus like a warm intro? Or maybe you even suggest doing both depending on the circumstance.
Yeah, it's always great to have a warm intro. You don't always, um, but you don't want to limit yourself to just that either. I think you can make colder introductions warm or like cold emails warmer by actually doing some research up front and basically being able to share why you're actually reaching out to this specific investor. You know, you don't want to reach out to or you don't want to just reach out to as many people as possible and some of them aren't going to be a fit for you either. So I think the more research, like, it's if you do research on 50 investors, and you can really tailor a personalized email, and, even if it's cold, it's less cold because, um, you talk about their portfolio, you talk about some LinkedIn posts they've made, it's gonna be worth the time you put into those rather than trying to send it out to 1,000 people.
Yeah, definitely. And I love what you shared there. You can make a cold email warm. I like that phrasing.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, but it's true. The more personalized you can get with it, the more hopefully likely you are to get some type of response. And it sounds like that it's just a really a case of quality over quantity, being able to curate the right amount of people and be intentional with it rather than just kind of spray and pray and trying to reach everyone with no clear focus.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, I mean, it depends on where you are, but, like, a lot of, like, here in Boston, for example, there's a lot of investors are speaking at different events, or, going out to networking events in the community, and so, um and even, pretty active on LinkedIn too, so, kinda there's ways to engage without just going straight into, "I wanna pitch you and, talk about my product." It can be, "Hey, I went out, saw you speak, like, would love to chat with you further," and kinda, build up a relationship before you go straight into, pitching them your business.
Totally. So I imagine you probably work with a lot of first-time founders as well. And so with them going through this process, they're likely very overwhelmed. And I imagine they get to the point where they know that they might need an investor, but they're like, I don't even know where to start or what first step to take. So if that's the case, do you typically walk founders through almost like an exploratory phase to help them understand where they need to begin? And if so, would love to hear your recommendations on that.
Yeah, it's always, so on the fundraising journey, I mean, the it's always helpful when there is multiple, like, when that's not the only thing holding you back, if you can keep making progress along the way, and, we work with the founders to figure out what some of those metrics, traction items, proof points can be. That's always really helpful because then, like, even if we're having more kind of exploratory introduction meetings with investors, if we come back to them a month later and they can see, you've already done some of the, proof points, and it looks a lot better 1 month later than it did, at the starting point. That's a great signal, and, shows that you're able to execute and deliver on even those short-term goals, and you'd be able to do a lot more with funding behind it.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's one piece, is just, like, crafting that plan of beyond the raise, what else can you be doing in the meantime? The other piece is, it is a lot, you know, different, or there's different components investors are looking for than your customer is gonna wanna know about. Like, your customer doesn't really care how big the market is, or they don't care, how you're they care what the price is, but they don't care, necessarily, like, how you're able to scale, scale, over all these markets, or what it takes to go from one city to the next, and those are all things investors really wanna know. So, it's even uncovering, like, in the first place, what, um I think the overlap is, why do customers care and investors wanna know that there's gonna be buyers, there's gonna be real users, and people will love it.
Mhm.
So integrating that into the pitch, but also helping them figure out all the other elements that maybe they haven't even put onto paper or thought of in the first place that investors wanna know about.
Totally. Yeah, and I love that you mentioned the part about proof points and metrics and things that show signal and traction and whatnot. And so this question is kind of broad, and I know that your answer will depend on the startup, but for any early founder who might not have revenue, so to say, as a proof point, what are other signals that you encourage them to look at that will show that there's traction towards those investors?
Yeah, if there's, uh, you know depending on, depending on the company, there could be a wait list of users. There could be, somebody that agreed to do a pilot if it's a B2B business. If it's more medical, life science related, that can even come down to other like physicians or experts in the space putting their reputation behind it, either on the advisory team or kind of writing a letter of interest that they would support clinical trials or they would support this device if it was out on the market. And so you can get, yeah, there's proof points like that. Grant funding as well, if you're eligible for that. Equity investors love to see grants because it's money that doesn't take away equity from the business, and it helps you, make more progress on the company in the meantime. Um, and yeah, just kind of showing like, hey, also, the team you built is showing you're able to get the right people behind this and you know you have other people that share in your idea and vision and want to make this a reality.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah, that's good to kind of show like the interest and engagement that potential customers or users are showing beyond paying for something. I love the waitlist and the pilot ideas.
Yeah, no, it's really helpful, and yeah, there's always something you can do to kind of get your brand out there, and I'm not a big fan of like stealth mode. I think there's always something like there can be pieces you want to keep private and hidden, but you should be at least able to talk about some aspects of your company and, build kind of connections and even just see like there's going to be things that you haven't even thought about that somebody says, well, I actually know somebody here that, would be a great partner for you, or I know somebody here that might be an interesting investor when you're ready for them. And, the more you can like let people know what you're working on and, give them the opportunity to help, the better it's gonna be.
Yeah, that's true. Because I feel like depending on the startup, sometimes founders might be more inclined to keep it to themselves, like everything, until they're fully ready to launch and have it public. But you just brought up a great point there that by being able to talk about what you're building, maybe to keeping some things private, but mainly talking about what you're building, it gives you the opportunity to connect with people who can help you or might have good advice. So I think that's a really good tip there for founders to remember that you don't want to gatekeep everything. There are certainly some things that you want to make sure people are seeing, watching, listening to, reading.
Right. And joining podcasts as well.
Exactly. And so, one thing that is super impressive about Prepare for VC is that with the founders you've worked with, you've helped them collectively raise close to $500 million in capital. And so, I would love to hear, I'm sure it's hard to pick a favorite, but any of those founders or startups that you're most proud of that got really good success through your programs.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of our earlier clients, that raised a good like, several large rounds, since then was, a company called Canela Media with Isabel Rafferty, and basically, like, it's cool, so they create, it was an entertainment tech company. They create Spanish speaking programming, but for the US market. And, they got funded by Comcast Ventures and, um, so yeah, more strategic venture capital groups. And it's cool because now, they're on like Roku platforms and other, streaming providers. And, was in a hotel and could see like, hey, they actually came up with their logo on the screen. And it's, exciting to see a company you worked with just like out in the wild. Um,
Hmm.
Another one too is a company that went through our breakthrough program called Xena Intelligence. And I would say they were doing AI before it was popular.
Oh, wow.
So basically it was like, what I really like about their venture is it actually started as a services organization. They were helping e-commerce businesses, or basically, people that were selling on Amazon and Walmart platforms, like, figure out their ad spend. And so, they figured out a way to reduce the costs, like, improve the timing, the keywords, and also increase the ROI on all the customers that they worked with. And then they created an AI engine to actually do all of this. And so, when in their pitch, and that's where, like, if we look at the regular template, like, it doesn't always work with the 10 slides, because their pitch is actually, it's probably 50 slides, but it's like 20, or it's like 5 seconds on each of them, because they're all, like, more visual snapshots of, hey, like, this is, it's actually kind of like an animation of, these were the customers we started with. This is, like, the journey of, um all the founders, that are going through a similar process, and how we're able to solve everything through the intelligence platform, and kind of goes into the other aspects from there. And they were able to raise from an angel group and then several venture funds, and they're doing really really well now.
You brought up a good point there that they didn't try to fit into the mold of like the typical 10 slide pitch deck. It's like they, to your point, did almost 50 slides, but they were intentional about it and they used great visuals to tell that story. And so I think that's a good reminder for founders where it's like you don't always need to stick to what's right or the proper thing to do, just as long as you're doing it effectively and capturing the interest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about what's going to work for your venture, and use everything else as a guide of, like, what needs to be part of that. But you can create kind of your own framing of the story and messaging that's going to fit the best for your business.
Totally, totally. And so, as we get into 2026, Jason, I would love to hear what's coming up next for Prepare for VC. If there's anything exciting that you're going to be rolling out or anything new that you're working on that you're able to talk about and share with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're excited. We actually have graduation for our current cohort this week we're doing. And then, so yeah, really proud of all the founders we've been working with since November on this cohort. We have a new batch. We're taking applications, and we're going to launch the middle of March, and that's going to have a graduation the end of May. So basically, it's a 10-week program. Generally, like, kind of our sweet spot is founders that they're an expert in their space, but it's their first time creating a angel or venture funded business. And so, we help them figure out the scaling strategy, kind of, their roadmap of where they are now, where do they go next, and also how do you put this into a venture fundable business and meet with the right people. We're doing, our one-on-one coaching and consulting. We're always, meeting new founders and starting new projects on a monthly basis there as well. Um, and then, yeah, also, would love to have you share the Compass tool. I can share a link to put in the show notes as well. And that's something, it's a free resource. Founders can start at any time and basically get an assessment of where you are now, your strengths, your opportunities to grow, and help figure out that roadmap for yourself of, what should be next and where can you turn for additional support.
Love it. And as you're based in Boston and so closely embedded in the tech ecosystem there, I would love to hear why you think Boston is such a great place to build and be a founder.
Yeah, so there's pretty much, any night of the week, especially, like, Tuesday through Thursday, there's always something going on. You can, in the startup community, you can, network, you can learn from speakers, you can, just go out and meet other entrepreneurs and have that community feel that, like, you're not the only one going through the same thing at the same time, which is great. And and then, yeah, there's some bigger events coming up too. We're also, like, we also run the startup grind Boston chapter here, and so we do fireside chats, panels, like pitch events, and we just actually talked with the team at the Startup World Cup the other day, and we're gonna sign up to lead the Boston pitch competition for Startup World Cup in May. So, and there's going to be a big startup tech week, A16Z Tech Week here. So it's always been a big startup community, but it feels like the last few years even more so in terms of like this is the first time that Tech Week is coming here. TechCrunch has done a conference here the last 3 years as well, and other kind of ecosystem players are like starting to recognize even more than before that they need to have a presence here, and that's really helpful for all the founders in this space. And so I think um, yeah, I'd say last thing is like it's a great place where you can also meet people to work together because there's a lot of talent coming you know, um, out of the universities. If you're in biotech or healthcare, from experts in the medical system here as well,
Mhm.
and even just people coming out of corporate roles that are starting their first venture or joining a venture or want to mentor. Like, there's a great mentorship community here as well.
Yeah, I love that. And now, one of my favorite questions to ask our guests is to give a shout out to someone in tech who's building something cool right now that they really admire. So, could be a founder, could be VC, builder, really anyone is fair game, but anyone that you're feeling inspired by lately, feel free to give them a shout out.
Oh, I like that. Um, yeah, so I think, or we actually use this for our Compass platform. I mean, I like what Lovable is doing because they made it a lot more accessible to build, for anybody to kind of build and develop and release new technologies. And so, I know they're just opening an office now in Boston as well. Um, but yeah, I think, kind of what we're going to see kind of change the game is all of these AI enabled tools and platforms really help more entrepreneurs that just didn't have a way to get started in the first place. Now there's a way to actually test and get something out relatively cheaply that, probably would have cost tens of thousands of dollars before. And now it can cost, $100 a month
Yeah.
to create and launch. And so, yeah, I think, what we're going to see is a lot more startups and people becoming entrepreneurs than ever before. And um, it doesn't, and then it's going to be kind of where that changes our role in the ecosystem and some of the other players is it might be easier to launch. It doesn't necessarily make it easier to scale. And so,
Hmm.
that's where we can help figure out like, hey, you've actually proven or you've either proven or you have to go out and prove that you can create something that people want and they want to use and engage with. And now how do you take what lessons you've learned and apply it to getting going after a bigger market there.
Yeah, yeah, that's great advice there. And a good shout out. Lovable is awesome. To your point, it's like there's so many tools out here that make it so accessible, like technology wise and money wise, like financial wise, for people to be able to get started and build something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been great.
totally. Jason, this has been such a good episode, and I've so enjoyed having you come on the show to talk about what you're building at Prepare for VC. And I'd love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to connect on LinkedIn. Also through our Prepare for VC, it's with the number four, .com site. And on there, we also have a link to our Compass tool to try everything out. And so, yeah, no, I'm really, really active on LinkedIn, happy to connect on any of the other platforms as well. And respond to, or either myself or Steve on our team responds to all the inquiries through our Prepare for VC site. So, we're happy to connect and learn more about all the ventures.
Perfect. And I will include those places in the show notes for our listeners to easily find you. But thank you so much again for coming on Tech Startup Network.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.